Welcome back to AM Northwest. They're a beautiful part of our scenery and a vital piece of our ecosystem. But how well do you know the trees you live with? Here to share a new field guide, we welcome the author of The Trees Around You, arborist and dendrologist, Casey Clapp. Great to have you with us.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, first question, what's a dendrologist?
That's a great question. It is a person who studies woody plants. So, namely, that's trees.
Yeah.
And it's also a class that a lot of foresters and people take if they're studying ecology or biology, things like that.
Right.
Where you study and learn how to identify trees specifically.
What was your mission in writing the book about trees?
That's a great question. The main mission is to really connect people with, as it says, the trees around them.
Right.
So if you are in the Pacific Northwest, you get a tree book and you say, hey, great, I'm going to go identify all the trees in the Pacific Northwest. All of the trees covered in those books are our native species. They're out in our forests. And those books don't really cover the trees that are in your backyard, along your streets, in your park. So you move to the Pacific Northwest, you live in a city like Portland, Vancouver, Seattle, something like that, or Spokane, Boise.
Right.
You walk outside your front door, there's no book to tell you what those trees are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
how fun it is that you get to figure out what trees.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look. You brought some cones.
I did.
And I want to say pine cones, but that's not the term for it, right? Because those would be coming from a pine tree.
From a pine tree, exactly.
So you can identify a tree by the cone that it drops.
That's right. Yeah, and so what I do in my book is I try to make identification of trees as simple and accessible as possible.
Good idea.
Where if you are like me, you've studied trees, I'm a working arborist, I've been doing this for over 15 years, then you are pretty familiar with a lot of the trees and how to identify them, what to look for. But if you're not, then where do you start? So if you're really good and you practice, you could look at each one of these cones right here and you could identify the species just by knowing what the cone looks like. So this is a knob cone pine. One of the best things about them is that they stay on the actual stems, on the twigs or the branches for almost indefinitely. Sometimes they have to decay off, or sometimes the tree actually grows around the cones.
Wow, what was the tree again?
This is the knob cone pine. That's Pinus attenuata is the name of it.
Wow. Okay, give me some more. I don't want to be the person that owns this tree in the backyard because cleaning this up would be tough.
That would be a lot. That's a Jeffrey pine. That's native down to the southern Cascades and the Siskiyous, all the way down through California and Yosemite National Park and places like that.
Wow.
Yeah, comparably rare up in Portland, but there are a few that we have peppered around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Show me a few more.
All right, so this right here, that is the sugar pine. That is another big native species that has some of the longest cones we have in the entire Pacific Northwest.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, they're not very heavy. So
No,
if
they're
that was to
super light.
fall, you know, you're not really going to get hurt. But there's a species down in California called the coulter pine,
Yeah.
and that has cones that are the size of your head and they're covered in spikes. That's one you have to wear a hard hat if you're walking around underneath them.
What are the, like when you walk around your neighborhood, what trees do you have in your neighborhood?
That's a great question. Most of the trees we have in Portland are non-native species. They're from Europe, they're from the East Coast.
Really?
Yeah, so our
Okay.
trees grow big here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So if we plant them around our houses or in our streets, places like that, they actually get too big. They can rip up the sidewalk and cause a lot of trouble. So we also have this kind of aesthetic idea that comes from old European and old East Coast ideals, where we want to plant big elm trees, big oak trees, big maple trees. So we have a lot of those kinds of trees in my neighborhood, in your neighborhood, all over the Pacific Northwest. So red maples and sycamore maples, the London plane tree, oak trees of all different stripes. So a lot of those.
Okay, there are a few more. So this one here.
That right there is Pinus armandi. That is a interesting species from China. It's called the Chinese white fir, and I just found that cone at Hoyt Arboretum not last week, and it's just beautiful. They're being dropped by the squirrels right now all over the place.
Wow. Okay, and this little guy?
That little guy is one of my favorite natives. That's actually one of the very first tattoos I have on my arboretum here, where I have all different tattoos.
You clearly, as we look at your tattoos, you have a problem.
I do.
You have an obsession.
My mom would agree.
I shouldn't say it's a problem. You have an obsession.
Obsession would be fair. I'll take that.
Yeah. When did you first start getting interested in trees?
Yeah, that was definitely as a young kid. I actually made a pond in my mom's backyard. I said, "Hey, can I dig a pond?" And she said, "Sure." The next day, I had a giant hole dug, and then I realized I kind of wanted to do landscape architecture.
Oh, okay.
Didn't really like doing the landscape architecture side of it, but I loved learning about the trees and the plants that they were using. So I steered into that, and then kept learning more and more and found that they were endlessly fascinating.
You even have a podcast. That's
I do,
how
yeah.
obsessive you are. Tell me about the podcast.
So the podcast is called Completely Arbortrary. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So we talk about trees and other related topics, and I do it with my good friend Alex Croson. And essentially, we pick a species of tree, we pick a topic related to it, and then we talk about it. Whether that is trees and religion, trees and ecology, trees and animals, trees and insects, trees and literally anything you can think of. We will find a way to say, hey, I bet you a tree has to do with that.
Yeah.
And then we rate them at the end of it. So we say, all right, we've talked about this tree and this topic.
Yeah.
What do we think of this tree? And we give it a review and a rating at the end of it.
I love it. Okay, and you have a book event at Powell's tonight at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
How fun is that? And we want to tell everyone that the book again is titled The Trees Around You. The book event tonight at 7, Powell City of Books, 10th and West Burnside. We'll put all that information for you on our website at katu.com. Casey Clapp, thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me.
You
Appreciate it.
bet. We'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.